Hello. Anybody talking?
Hi, Sue. Am I working today?
No.
Can you hear me today?
I can hear you today.
Okay, good. So my home computer works great.
It is working well.
It must have been an issue with the setting with my work computer.
No, you're fine.
So good.
Is that Kelly? Hello. I've decided to take it outside of my deck. It is much too nice to be cooped up for hours inside.
I believe we are being recorded. I see the red light flashing, just so you know.
And saves me in the least.
Sadly, my desktop will not extend all the way to the back porch. Otherwise, I would have done that. So.
Luckily, I've got a power outlet out here.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
People. So for many reasons, it's good to have one person chair the meeting and another person handle the tech. So how this will work this time in the public portion of the meeting, I'll call on people. People who join as guests need to be promoted as panelists, but I think Dave Coulier already is, so he can already speak. If other people join, she can do that too. I think we have enough to have quorum. Let me see. Yeah, because only Dave and Jennifer are not there. So we may still have a few people joining, but without further ado, I see there are a number of messages, but I think that's just people trying to get on. So without further ado, I will call the meeting to order, and would the secretary take roll call?
Sure thing. Tarquinio?
Present.
Newberry?
Here.
Hall here. Kopen-Katzif?
Here.
Bartlett?
Here.
Davila Richards? Fox? Hernandez? Kissel?
Here.
Koretsky?
Here.
Kroll? Myers?
Here.
Radsky? Riley?
Here.
Savino?
Here.
Schatz?
Here.
South? Walker?
Okay. We have quorum, and would the secretary treasurer just remind us who is missing? We have most people, but who was?
Yeah, the no's are Davila Richards, Fox, Hernandez, Kroll, Radsky, and South.
Okay.
So 6.
Oh, right. We knew about Kroll, right. Okay.
And Joe Radsky is going to be joining shortly.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah, I was hoping we'd have as much participation as possible, but we obviously have quorum, so we'll get started. The next item is approval of the minutes. We have 2 meeting minutes. And for clarity, I've read them. I did not have time to read them carefully in the past. The president, often the executive director, and others read them very carefully beforehand and proofed them, but it's been a busy month. So I hope that everyone has given them a careful read and will recommend changes. We got one important change in advance, which we've already made to these. So with that, do we have a motion to approve? I think, is there a question about approving both sets of minutes as one, or do people have questions they want to raise? Can we have a motion to approve both sets of minutes?
I think we should maybe handle them separately just for simple votes. But
Okay.
I also, there's 2 suggestions I'd like to make to Jennifer, or I can make them myself.
Right. We can actually do a motion to approve the minutes in a second and then do the discussion just to see if there are changes. So let's do the motion to approve the April 13th minutes.
So moved.
Okay, that was Patty. Second, who was the second?
Lauren.
Lauren, okay, thank you. Do we have any discussion? Matt.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, this is the May minutes we're talking about first?
No, the April 13th. I'm
Okay.
doing them in order.
April. Yeah. My only suggestion is the minutes reference 6 reports, which were not attached to the document I said. So as long as staff attaches those reports that were, those written reports from April's meeting, will be good.
That'd be good. Also, Jennifer did not have time to format them this week because of the accelerated schedule. But yeah, Jennifer, just make note of that to add the reference reports. Any other discussion about the April 13th minutes?
This is
Okay.
a small
Yes.
point.
Patty?
This is a small point, but should they still be called draft, given that they are now publicly available and we haven't approved them yet? Shouldn't they?
They are draft until they're approved. That's how it works. Once they're approved, then the draft comes off. Typically, we format them first and do some other things, but the copy will remain the same once they're approved. Yeah, and then the draft will come off and it'll be formatted and put online. Any other questions, comments, corrections? Okay. We have a motion on the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, the minutes are approved. Do we have a motion to approve the May 6th minutes?
So moved.
Okay, Lauren, do we have a second?
I'll second. So
Sue, okay. We have a motion on the table. Does anyone have any comments on the May 6th minutes? Matt?
Yeah, just a very small thing. In the one of the sentences on the long-term strategic planning conversation, I have an extra SPJ in there. So if we can just delete the second one. Minor
Okay,
typo.
that's a simple copy editing fix. Anything else? Okay, we have a motion in favor. All those on the table, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion is approved. Okay, so the next item, and this will be very brief, is an EIJ 2021 update. This board already approved moving the venue to New Orleans in the April meeting, and Bashrat has been proceeding along that. So there's no action item here, but I did want to give you an update. As mentioned in the weekly report, Bashrat and I were going to visit on Tuesday. Kelly was going to join us, and unfortunately, Kelly, we did miss you. Some work things came up, and he was. I mean, it's great, but I have to say, Kelly did send us some good pointers by email. It's really important to have the local touch there. So it was basically a standard venue visit. I do believe it is actually a very good space for our convention. First of all, we will have the entire 3rd and 4th floors, and there are good sight lines between them. So the public space, the big super sessions, the breakout sessions are primarily going to be on the 3rd floor. There's some smaller rooms and boardroom space on the 4th floor, and that's where we'll have the committee meetings and the smaller meetings. And at some venues in the past, it was really difficult to get from the main convention to, say, the ethics committee meeting. That will be very easy this time. They're really close, but also you can see from one to the other. And there's both stairs and elevators. So I think that's good. They have good signage. I talked to them a lot about making sure we had clear signage there. The other thing that's very, very important to consider is we do not know who our convention partners will be this far out in 2021. This space works for us if SPJ is there on its own. We'll take about our hotel room block will be about half of the hotel, and that's fine. We can get a contract for that. If we add a large partner, we'll take up most of the hotel, and there is a bridge to another Hyatt property immediately across the way, which is expansion space. So if we have like 3 or 4 partners, we can actually fill the whole space, but we will be able to be there and be profitable with just ourselves. So it's extremely flexible. I think Bashrat did a good job of finding a space that was like flex space for us. It's about a mile or so from the French Quarter, so it's not where we were at the Sheraton before. It is walking distance for many people. There's also a streetcar that passes directly in front of the hotel. As Kelly pointed out, the streetcar does end at midnight, which we did ask them about, and they said most people take the streetcar over and then Uber back from the French Quarter. But they did give us a tour of the few blocks right around the hotel. And there's plenty of food. And in fact, given that it's a little less touristy, there are actually a lot of cheaper, quick places that you can go. And they're nice, but I'm not talking McDonald's. I mean, they're nice restaurants, but they're probably a bit more economical, especially for students. So, and we've got a good rate. So that's the convention space that he told you about in the April meeting, but we've now checked it out, and I'm convinced it's going to be a very good fit for us. So Kelly, although you weren't there on the tour, you are local and you know the space in the neighborhood. Is there something you want to add?
No, it's pretty nice. I mean, it was excellent being at the Sheraton because it was always walking distance. But I mean, the streetcar, it's not a traditional streetcar line, but it does drop you off 2 blocks, I believe 2 blocks from Bourbon Street. It's relatively safe. It's a part of the quarter that's well lit. I mean, they keep it lit from, you know, where tourists go. I mean, it's one of the most violent cities in the world, yet if you're looking for trouble, you can find it. If you're trying to avoid trouble, it's actually fairly easy to avoid trouble. So.
Now, that's interesting you should point that out, because there were two women showing me around the area around the hotel, and one of them is actually a New Yorker, but her husband is from New Orleans, and she said he feels safe with her walking around in the hotel area after dark and winter on her own. And she did emphasize that it was a safe area, and she was probably thinking, Kelly, about what you just said about the well-known crime rate.
Yeah,
but that area is safe.
I would hate to produce a map and redline the city, but we need to tell people, do not go more than 2 blocks upriver from the hotel. Do not go more than 2 blocks toward the lake. Do not, but
right around there is good. She pointed that out a couple times, which made me think that it was a question. I also have to say it's kind of a bit, it's near the French Quarter, but it's also kind of businessy because Entergy is right there, which is probably why there's a ton of lunch spots that are more like the kinds of lunch spots, you know, office workers would go to on their break. Is that right, Kelly?
I mean, the Associated Press office, when I was there, was on one corner from the Superdome, and it just moved basically to the other side of the building. And so, I mean, we would walk easily, and then, again, I mean, the only trouble we had at night, of course, this is 35 years ago, that we would carry a short wallet, and we would stick our real wallet in our socks and that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, it was never, like I said, if you're willing to put up with the hassle of, you know, perhaps getting mugged, you know, like I said,
but that was 35 years ago. That's not now.
Right. That was 35 years ago.
Right. Let's be clear. I don't want to scare people. No, it seemed like a bit more of a business district. And actually, Kelly, I almost forgot to mention, it is right near the Superdome, too. Right. So they did mention that they had been pretty flooded out in Katrina. The hotel shut down for like 6 years. So they've completely rebuilt. So the hotel, although it's been there a long time, it is brand new. Walk around, brand new. There were a lot of restaurants for a hotel that size in the hotel. And they said that's because when they reopened, there was not much around the neighborhood. Now there is. So there's a lot of in-dining option in the hotel too.
Right. And when I mentioned carrying a short wallet, that was because when you're a cheap journalist, you park in the off neighborhood, and then you walk to it at midnight and things like that. I mean,
okay.
Our purposes, you know, I mean, we will be between the Quarter and the Superdome and the Hyatt, and we should not. You stay in that core, so you should not have any problem at all. Again,
Patty has a question.
Look for trouble, you can find it.
Right, which some people do look for in New Orleans. Patty.
Right, just wanted to know, Alex, if we have any updates. I'm guessing the answer is no, on whether RTDNA is even possible for 2021. Or according to my notes, at one point we were talking about ASNE as being a likely or a potential partner.
Yeah, I don't like to mention too much by name. I will say, you know, at a public meeting, I did ask one potential partner to join us on the walkthrough, and they didn't make it. But this was like, I think, with like 5 days notice or something, you know, because I heard about it very late. So I do not read too much into that at all. I mean, they're busy people. It's hard to go to New Orleans on such short notice. We also have, and without mentioning their name, we have the potential for a partner we've never had at the convention before. The recent partnership summit that I held in New York, the purpose of that, and this I had pitched the idea even before I ran for president-elect, was to bring in new outside partnership groups. And one of them did come up to me in Boshrot during that weekend in New York at the end of April, and say that they might be interested in joining us at the 2021 convention. And it was specifically 2021 because of their convention schedule. And it's a pretty large partner. It would bring, I mean, they have hundreds of people at their convention, but they are changing their schedule. Anyway, without going into details, because I don't want to say anything that would identify them, I don't know if they've even discussed it in a board meeting yet. But there is a potential new and exciting partner out there that's specifically looking at 2021, and we told them that we were moving it to New Orleans, and that seemed interesting to them. So that was a conversation we had a couple weeks ago, a about 4 weeks ago now, but haven't followed up because the last 4 weeks have been busy, but we're going to get back to them on that. So now that we've seen the venue space, Bosharat's going to follow up. So I believe we will have partners, but I said at the start, we could be there on our own without, in other words, without losing money. The contract we're committing to is a room block that we can fill. So Lauren.
I know at the last meeting, we talked about a couple of different dates. Where are we at with dates?
Yes, that's very important. They were able to adjust their dates to our schedule. We're now looking at September 1st through 5th because I think the problem at the April meeting is we'd also been looking at late August and people thought that would be difficult. So how is, and we do need to sign this contract soon. They'd initially wanted us to sign it by yesterday, May 31st, and Bosharat was able to negotiate 2 more weeks so we could discuss the dates in this meeting and any other questions you had. I mean, to be clear, this is the venue that was pitched in April that we preferred, but the dates we're looking at now are September 1st through 5th. Any questions about that, or does that strike people? Any concerns? Does that sound like a good idea? I think that was the range the board was looking at in April.
I think it sounds fine.
Good.
The question is always the academic schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Schools start as early as the 2nd or 3rd week of August, all the way until right after Labor Day. So there's no perfect time. I guess my question is not related to that, Alex, but related to the contract. So we sign a contract to be solo, or do we sign a contract that has the flexibility to be solo and or add a partner?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And to be clear, I mean, in the past, SPJ has always signed the convention contract, even when we partnered with RTDNA and HJ or others, NAJA. We've always signed the contract and then brought them in, and we have an agreement with those partners. So we would sign the contract. The contract has food and beverage, which Bosharat said we can easily fill. In other words, we're committing up front to a certain amount of food and beverage and room block. The food and beverage we can easily fill with the president's banquet, the, in our board meetings and whatnot. The room block we're committing to is something we can fill or have filled in the past. If we add partners, and hopefully we do that relatively soon, Bosharat goes back to the hotel and says, can we increase the size of the room block? But what we're committing to has to be something that we can fill ourselves and we can be profitable. We're there on our own, even though Bosharat and I both believe we probably will add one or two groups. But those will be just increasing the size of our ask. Lauren.
I wanted to go back to the dates for a minute because I do recall when we talked about the dates that you mentioned that some people expressed concern about this being over Labor Day weekend. I don't know if we've ever had a convention over Labor Day weekend and what impact that might have on attendance. And I don't know if the following weekend was a possibility or not. But I just wanted to raise that because I recall us talking about the last weekend of August and this weekend, but nothing into the month of September.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the end of the availability. The availability was late August through September 5th. So because of the concern about the Labor Day, that's why Bosharat had initially recommended late August in the April meeting. And some people were worried about the fact that students might not be back from vacations or internships yet. So that's why we went to September 1st through 5th. So basically, essentially, it's a choice between late August and possibly being concerned about the academic calendar or the first week in September. So that's the choice the board has to make. And we basically have, I think, basically a 2-week period to make that once we sign the contract. Well, once you sign a contract, they may give you flexibility to change the date, but we will have signed a contract and made a financial commitment.
You know, I realize that, Labor Day may be interfering with some vacations that people want to take, but it is a free day for academics and students to have. So I personally don't have a problem with it, but I understand that, some people may have plans to go to the lake or whatever. I mean, I realize it may interfere with that, but it also would mean an extra day off for people. So
that's an excellent point. And also, for some people, going to New Orleans is a vacation. Even if they're there for a conference, they're in the French Quarter, they're on Bourbon Street. That's going to be an exciting time. So, were there any questions? Did I see further hands? Yes, Matt.
Do we know, and maybe the academics on the board can elucidate, but do we know when in 2021 schools go back? Is this like, does that cause problems, not just because of the holiday, but because of the school start?
It's a variety. I mean, as Patty said, generally, I would say second to third to fourth. You know, those 3 weeks, schools can go back second to third to fourth week of August. My school typically goes back the third week of August.
Thank you.
Yeah, quarter system is typically a little later. You know, Northwestern, DePaul, places like that are third week in September. So it's always a little early for them. But, you know, most schools that are on semesters are third week of August. At the very latest, they would head back right after Labor Day. Some start Tuesday after Labor Day. So the kids are back on campus anyway and can still go.
The other academics on the board? Okay, so as I said, this doesn't really require a vote because the only thing that requires a vote is the expenditure, and we've already agreed to move it to New Orleans that year. But should I take this as consensus? It sounds like that people are okay with the September 1st through 5th, moving it to the later period. Okay, I see a thumbs up from Kelly, who's the local on the board. So that's it. Okay, so we're all set. I'll tell Basharat to proceed with the contract in those dates. Excellent. Okay. Okay. So moving right along to the main topic. And I should say, obviously, the agenda is a little different this time because of the events of the past month. I thought this would be more of a typical committee update, but most of the rest of this we will spend discussing the transition. And the first thing I want to say is that we'll have the public session with a public comment period. So far, I just see Dave Cooley. In fact, is Dave still here? He was here. I don't see Dave now, but okay, we may have public people join us for the public comment period. I did invite Hagit and Erwin, and I felt it was actually pretty important to have them. Unfortunately, they're both traveling today. This is happening right at the time when Hagit and her family are getting onto a flight. So I'll obviously report back to them whatever decisions we make. Some of the decisions we make later, oh good, Dave is back. I think Jennifer, you might look, I think he needs to be elevated so he's on the main screen. Some things we decide or discuss today will also need to be discussed by and decided by the foundation board. So just FYI. And fortunately, Dave is back, so we have some representation there. By now, I trust you've all read my report. Oh, except I should mention Dave, since I know you're listening in. This report went only to my board for executive session because it does discuss specific contract details. Whatever we decide, I'll then be writing about an email to members. But right now, we may refer to you a few things that Dave hasn't seen the report, and Jennifer, of course, she's managing the Zoom. But the first thing, and let me switch over to that. Okay. The report covers both the transition, the executive director search, and also the transition in the office. And I think you all know by now, if you've read the weekly report, that I was there on Wednesday. And I do plan on going more often, like over the summer. The first thing I'll announce is I am proposing a very different approach, but the core of the search process, of course, is still the same. The presidents of the SPJ and SDX Foundation, well, what we now call the SPJ Foundation, each appointed equal number of members. Erwin and I discussed the proper size of the board and of the committee and what we want it to look like. And he has appointed himself and 2 volunteers from his board who are both external members, Betento Batts and Michael Bolden. And I've appointed myself, Patty, and Matt. And finally, I did invite Hagit to chair. And as most of you know, Hagit is not only a past president, she's future SPJ Foundation president and will be working with the next executive director over many years. And also this will be her 3rd at least her third search committee. It'll be the second she chairs. She chaired the executive director search committee that selected Joe. They looked externally, but then they selected an internal candidate. So she and I have been over in great detail what it would look like if we do hire, and without going into the contract specific details, which will go into executive session, I've also recommended hiring an executive director search committee to support this search, to help us go out and find really the very best people. And my report gets into the cost benefit analysis. And she's very on board with that. So the way it would work is over the summer, they would work with the committee and also the board on crafting and description, a new job description. They'll first touch base with the committee and talk about what we see this role as. They'll also craft some surveys, both for the full board, I assume both boards, and because I explained the role reports in both boards, and the staff, separate surveys, similar to what we did with the ED search, but they're an outside firm. They're coming in with clear eyes, and they're management consultants, and they will help us craft those surveys, and they'll be completely anonymous. We will not see the individual responses to those surveys. They will summarize them for us, which I also like. For example, with the ED review, I saw the responses, and I summarized them for you. I have to tell you, I could tell both from the board and the staff, I had an idea who did, even though they were anonymous, who some of them might have been from. That will not be true for any members, even of the search committee, so they will be really entirely anonymous. With that, they'll help us craft the job description. They will then go out. We can publicize it to our members and on job boards however we want and bring in candidates that way. But they will also go out nationally to similar nonprofits and try to recruit. It's a classic headhunter. They'll try and recruit qualified candidates for us to consider, and they will then screen the pool and bring to the executive director search committee qualified candidates. The executive director search committee will then screen all of those, decide which it wants to interview. All 7 members of the search committee will be in all of those interviews and be able to ask questions and have then go off into their meetings and have an equal vote on which candidates to advance to the next level. By the time you get to the final level, you've had at least 3 rounds of interviews. Oh, and I should mention, they've pre-interviewed these candidates. They don't just look at resumes. They actually do individual interviews with candidates they think are qualified before they bring them to us. And then we do a series of interviews. They guide us through those interviews. They help tell us which are the best practice questions to ask in terms of finance. Someone's experience managing finance, managing technology. They help guide us through those interviews in advance. So when we go into the interviews, we know what to ask, and we don't have to turn to the consultant and say, hey, are we doing this right? And then after that process, of course, the committee will meet and hold a meeting and decide on their recommendations, and Hagit will then write a report for the board to consider. And then the board will vote. Now, this is a pretty aggressive timeline. I'm trying to get to that point in time for our September 5th board meeting. I spoke with 2 firms, and they said that's aggressive. It's possible, and we're going for it. But obviously, our preference is to get the best person. So it will depend on how, they said sometimes it goes really quickly. You go out, you ask people, you find your dream candidates right off, and it goes quickly. Sometimes they're trying to recruit and, they keep going to these great people, but they're not interested, for example, in relocating or something. So that's an aggressive timeline. It might happen, it might not. So just FYI, that's the best timeline we can hope for, is to get someone by that convention, which would be terrific because then they could come and they can actually see the convention. So that's the executive director search. And that is, by the way, my recommendation, rather than doing it like the old committee where only they considered people. Now for the interim plan, and this was all guided by an ad hoc transition committee I had with the SPJ executive committee, plus Irwin and Hagit to represent the foundation. We had a couple weeks ago and discussed, it had its recommendations on what we wanted to do. The management assessment is crucial. We all, I believe, felt that the management assessment was extremely important, both to give us an idea on what the short-term issues we need to address at headquarters, but also to serve as a guide or a roadmap for the new executive director. The new executive director, however qualified she or he is, will be coming into a situation that they'll need to hit the ground running. This report will help them to do that. Additionally, and this is where it gets interesting, we're trying to do something that's actually pretty unusual. We're trying to have this person serve in the office a couple days a week to be on hand. Oh, wait, are people waving the cat?
Yeah. Alex, just because you raised the search committee, and now you're talking about.
I know. I'm just summarizing the report, the public parts of the report, not the contract. And then we'll discuss this, and then we'll have to wait to discuss certain things when we get into the executive session. But let me finish. I'm almost done with the report. Just give me one more minute to wrap up the report. There are people on the line, for example, who have not seen the report because they're not in that executive session. So the second part is we found one firm that was interested in having this person be in the office a couple days a week. So that's another thing that we'll be discussing in the exec. And I also plan to go to the office much more often over the summer, so there's more coverage there. So in the public session, I do want to talk about what we are looking for an executive director. I think this is a good point to begin that conversation. And this will inform the executive director search committee, and if we hire the consultant. And then we will need to go into executive session to discuss the contracts, whether we are hiring a consultant and which one and for which services. Okay. Excellent. Michael has his hand raised.
First of all, I read your executive director interim report. I think it was freaking awesome. So just wanted to say that. I looked up the people that the foundation want to put on the search committee. They're amazing. One works for Knight, one works for Scripps. Having that background would be equally amazing. I guess my only suggestion would be that everything that I read on executive director searches and talking to people at Kellen, because I deal with them, they're a management firm for another organization I'm in. Seems like all the suggestions are that you want the chair of a search committee to be someone who's in leadership but will be a future leader, because it's also a good way to create that bond for the next leader, whoever gets chosen. So I love the search committee. I guess if I had any recommendation at all, it would be Patty chairs it, because she's going to be the one working.
For the benefit of those people who are not on our board emails, this came up, I think, the day before yesterday in an email. There's a couple people who are not on the board emails. And I didn't see it until yesterday because my flight was canceled coming back on Wednesday. So I was on a hellish trip trying to get home from Indianapolis on Thursday. So I did not see this until Patty pointed out to me. First of all, I would say I invited Hagit to do this back at the beginning of this process, and she's accepted, and she and I have worked on this plan. Hagit is a future leader. She's the #2 officer of the foundation, just as Erwin was when he chaired the last committee. I know Patty's gone around and talked to some of you, and I'm actually quite disappointed in this. The fact is, Hagit is a future leader. Erwin has said that he's only going to be president for one term. Hagit is going to be the leader of the foundation for many years, beyond the time that Patty and I will be on the SPJ board. And the executive director works for both the foundation and, I see your hand, but let me just say, Hagit is an exceptional choice. She chaired the committee that chose Joe. She's been involved in leadership positions, I think, for decades at SPJ, and she and I have actually worked on this plan together. I think you should all know that all 7 of the voting executive director search committee members will have an equal vote. Patty, Matt, myself, the 2 external members, and Hagit and I have an equal vote. Hagit doesn't have a greater say. She'll chair the meetings and she'll write the final report. I think you should also know that Patty will be exceptionally busy going into the convention. And if this search goes into her term, it would be wildly inappropriate to have the current president leading it. The timing is impossible just impossible for Patty to chair this because a month or so. No, but let me just say, I mean, since you brought this up, I would rather not have discussed this, my reasons for not selecting Patty, but since you brought it up, I'm telling you, it would be a catastrophe.
Alex.
And furthermore, let me just say, this is actually out of order because
no, this is not.
Per our bylaws,
our bylaws allow us to do this as a committee.
Yes, but the SPJ president is the chief executive of the society. And the SPJ president appoints the chair of the executive committee. It's not actually a popularity contest. I'm sorry, the executive director search committee. It does not work like this.
That is not the reason that we would like to have Patty at the
No, but let me tell you.
No,
Patty, Patty, I know you went around and spoke to people before this, and it's very disappointing, and I hope no one does it in your term. But, Patty, let me finish, Sue, because I am leading this meeting.
Fine.
And
do not chastise me publicly.
No, I'm telling you, there are very good reasons that Erwin and I chose to construct this committee the way we did.
Alex,
and we have.
Why we have a reason as to why we think Patty should do it. If you could just take a moment and then you can come back. This is how you have a conversation.
No, but I'm telling you, this search is very likely to go into Patty's year as president. And at the beginning of the term of a new president, you are working 24/7 as president. And by the way, this even before your term begins, you need to be working 24/7, dealing with EIJ issues, dealing with start of term issues, dealing with the national committees. It's not a popularity contest, but period, end of exclamation point. The president of SPJ, who per our bylaws is the chief executive, appoints the chair to the executive director search committee. I'm in that role until I hand over the gavel to Patty. So this whole conversation is actually out of order. Patty.
No, it's not, Alex. Listen, there is a
Patty. I've called on Patty. I'm sorry, Sue. I'm leading the meeting and I've called on Patty.
To appoint and assign duties.
I'm sorry, Sue, but I'm leading the meeting. I'm chairing this meeting and I've recognized Patty.
A leader and let your
Sue, I have recognized Patty. She has the floor.
Well, I could have taken that too.
Thank you, Alex. And let's please keep decorum here, guys. So first of all, Alex, I wasn't trying to do an end run, but truly you did not communicate with me at all through the whole process. And for that, I'm very disappointed. So you might chastise me for disappointing you for seeking support from fellow board members, but you did not communicate with me. You called me 15 minutes ago when I was prepping for this meeting for the very first time to explain your reasons. If we'd had that conversation early in the process, perhaps I'd be on board. I have nothing against Hagit, but I feel as though SPJ, this is SPJ's hire, and I will be working as you worked very, very closely with Allison through her whole tenure. I'll be working very closely and be the point of contact with our new executive director. I realize I'll just be in that role 1 year, as you have been in the role 1 year, but it seems appropriate to me that SPJ have the majority position on the search committee and that I would like to chair it. Yes, I
understand you'd like to chair it. I do understand that. I also am telling you, you will not have time. You will be exceptionally busy before EIJ. I do want you to be involved in the long-term planning committee. I want you to be involved in the executive director search committee. You should understand that when you're president, you can't go around chairing things. When you're president, you cannot chair every committee. You need to delegate. And you're reaching that point in your term where you're coming into your time as president and you need to delegate. Okay. I saw Matt and then Lauren.
I'd just like to echo two things. I'm going to keep this as short and civil as I can. We're all professionals. We either manage people or we don't manage people, but we all manage time. And we've done it for years. I think we should respect each other's desires to help out. And respectfully, Alex, I really do agree with Michael. This memo that you put together was amazing. I was really upset that we did not get it online 72 hours before this meeting so that we could get it in front of the public. Very upset. But the thoroughness, the nuance of your memo ease those concerns for me as Secretary Treasurer. I can easily go to the public and say, yeah, we didn't post it in time, but look at this thing. If you can't, you know what I mean? It's amazing. We feel like we're going to make a good decision. There is one suggestion I have, again, to echo what others have said, and clearly Patty has a desire to do this. She clearly has an ability to do this. The bylaws say that, yes, you can appoint members. They also say that the board can appoint members.
No, they do not.
They actually do, and I can point.
No, they do not. No, they do not.
I can read the line of the memo.
No, they do not.
I can read it to you if you'd like, if you'd let me.
No, they do not.
Yeah, Matt, will you please read it for the board?
This has been a problem this entire year. Okay, Matt. First of all, as to the 72 hours, I do want to say this was not a public memo. Unfortunately, we do discuss a lot about the contracts. These are specific contract proposals that we need to weigh. We can't mention the names of the firms. So it was not a public memo. It was not subject to that 72-hour rule. Typically, these types of executive session memos are sent to the board within a couple days in advance. The reason it was not sooner, my goal was to get it to everyone by Thursday evening. I interviewed all of these search firms the week before Memorial Day. I told them I would all be there on Wednesday. They sent me their proposals on the Tuesday after Memorial Day meeting. I met with the firm on Wednesday, asked them to make changes to the proposal. First of all, as you all know, my flight was canceled. I spent all evening in the airport and then had 3 hours to sleep and had to get up at 4 a.m. to get back from Indianapolis and did not get back till late. That's why I was late writing the memo. Also, the firm that I spoke with did not get me a redo until 1 a.m. Thursday night into Friday morning. I had a back and forth at 1 a.m. I had another phone call with her on Friday morning to follow up, to yet again change some things in the contract. And that's when I sent the executive session memo to the board. So I do think this board needs to be a little more reasonable. Yes, I would have loved to have sent that to you 2 or 3 days in advance, but it was physically impossible to do so. Okay, Matt, and then Lauren.
So just per Lauren's question, the pertinent language is in Article 7, Section 3, and it's pretty clear as I read it. The Board of Directors is authorized to appoint and assign duties to committees that it deems necessary.
Yep.
But that is not our policy. This is a joint task force of the two boards. It's not our policy. It is not our policy.
But it is a bylaw.
Okay, so I believe I'm next.
Yes.
Can I finish? Sorry to interrupt, Lauren. I didn't mean to step on your comment, but I never made my reasoning behind my disagreement with Alex on this and why I think Patty should share this. No slight intended in any way to Hagit, who I think is one of the Mount Rushmore leaders of this organization, full stop. I worked with her on the ED search team. She was great. She will do great on this committee as a member of the committee.
Right.
But I do think Patty has also shown amazing skills at getting people to work in the right direction here. What Patty did with the governance restructuring committee was godlike. Are you kidding me? What happened with that task force and the work that we did and the way that we moved that to completion? So that's one thing. Also, this is SPJ's hire. I think that SPJ should chair this committee because I think it's ultimately our responsibility. And also, given what happened with the last time around, I would love to see someone who has come to this with kind of new ideas and a new way of doing it. And the fact that Hagit has been on the last two, you know, let's have someone else get a turn here because this is a very important moment for SPJ. And we literally at a crossroads here, and we need to take the right path.
Okay, first of all,
thank you for listening.
Regarding to Hagit, I was not going to say, but regarding to Hagit being on the last two, Hagit and I have been working closely on this project for the last month. We are going to run this completely differently. She is 100% on board, for example, with hiring the consultants, something that did not happen last time. So people do learn from experience. Hagit has had this experience. Patty and I have not. I would also point out that I was not on the search committee for the person who was going to be executive director during my term, which I felt was a terrible mistake. I would not in a million years have thought that the incoming president should chair that for all the reasons I just said. Lauren and then Kelly Kissel.
Okay, there are two issues from the report that I want to address. That I want to first make reference to the fact that at, I believe, our last meeting and at least a couple of meetings, Erwin has said that this board has the right to set policy. So something from the past doesn't necessarily have to govern now, and this board can make a motion and change previous policy. First, I want to go to the chair of the committee issue. And my view of this is purely structural. I served on this board when Hagit was president. She is phenomenal. She's above reproach. She's incredibly talented, but she's not a current member of the society board. She's vice president of the foundation board. And I wanted to make the same point that Matt made. This is a society board hire. And from a structural perspective, I think that it should be a society board leader who chairs the committee. It's not a personality issue. It's not a skill issue. It's a structural issue. And that's why from the very beginning, I thought Patty should be the chair. If Patty determined that she was too busy, and I trust Patty's judgment on that, and that's her choice, then the next choice to me would be Matt. The second point I want to bring up is relation to how the search is conducted. And while we had discussed this a little bit in executive session, this is a process issue. This is not a contract issue. So I want to discuss it in public session. Last time, the way that it came, the recommendation came to this board was essentially as a fait accompli. We had one person brought forward and there had already been a negotiation. And I think that it's very important that the board, whether it's this board or the next board, because this should not be rushed because of EIJ, that whatever board it is has a say. So I like to recommend that the top 3 finalists from the search committee do Zoom interviews with the board before a selection is made. So those are the two.
Well, one that I spoke about.
And in fact, so we have a motion on the floor.
We do not have a motion on the floor.
I'm happy to, I'd like to make
No,
one.
and that motion is out of order. I'm telling you that motion will not pass because it is out of order. But we're still having a conversation. I do also want to say, for people who may not know the history, Lauren is wrong that there's a structural issue. Erwin chaired the executive director search committee when he was the vice president of the foundation. There's also a history.
That's right, but I was not
There's
on
no
the board at
structural
the time
problem.
when that decision was made, and I would have said then what I said now. I think Erwin is fantastic too, but I still believe
there's no structural.
Somebody who is on the society board should chair it.
Okay, Kelly has the floor.
I just wanted to make the point that if we, Joe was absolutely wonderful to work with, and I think he on that committee just knocked one out of the park when we selected him. And we mentioned, and you'd mentioned in your remarks that Hagit was, because of her performance there and leading in that committee's work and her leadership, that would qualify her for the leading the committee this time. When that committee was put together, she was a member of the society board, not the foundation board. And so if we would hope to be consistent, then Patty would be the logical choice and would be it should be in her court because she is the person who is most closely situated to the panel that selected Joe. So we had such tremendous success then. Let's try that because
okay, we really do have to wrap this up. The fact is, we're really having a discussion about nothing. Patty, Matt, and I, SPJ, we have this committee is airtight. Erwin and I are happy with it. Everyone who's heard about it is happy with it. I've discussed it with the consultants. It is airtight. We have the top 5 officers from both boards. We have 2 external directors from the foundation who represent amazing other outside foundations. We have an extremely experienced person with decades of leadership at SPJ leading it, but you should understand the vast majority, if we go with this plan, and by the way, everything changes if we do not go with this plan. This plan is based on me doing essentially free leadership for the next 3 months. I'm going to be doing effectively, we would have to pay in effect like another $100,000 in the plan I promoted for if we had to hire someone to do what I'm doing. And Higit is on board with this plan. We have an airtight plan. I know you all love Patty. I love and respect Patty. Patty is in no way being passed over. Patty has 1/7 of the votes, just as everyone else on that committee, including Higit. However, I do think there's a problem with everyone in a public meeting saying that Higit is somehow less than ideal to chair this committee. Higit is perfect to chair this committee. She is absolutely perfect. And Patty will be on this committee. Patty will also be working very hard on the EIJ. Patty will also be working
Alex,
very hard. No, I'm concluding this because I'm chairing the meeting. I am concluding this. Patty is going to be in charge of EIJ. She's going to be an integral member with Victor leading the long-term strategic plan. She's going to be planning for her year, which is nonstop talking to board members. And she's going to be on the Executive Director Search Committee doing everything that Higit and I and the members of the Executive Director Search Committee are doing.
Can you now recognize Mike Savino? I feel really bad for all the blood on his shoulder.
Mike.
Thanks. Actually, I most of the points that I was going to make were already made, but I do take exception to the fact that these can. I also think Patty should chair it if Patty wants it. It should be her decision about whether or not she has the time. But this isn't a reflection of Higit or whether or not she's qualified. This is a philosophical view that we work more closely with the executive director than the foundation does, and so it should be an SPJ chaired committee. Also, in the chat on the side, there's questions about why there isn't anyone under 40 on this committee as well. If we're trying to make a long-term hire, as we're trying to recruit more younger members, perhaps we should have somebody under 40 on this search committee as well to get some perspective from our younger members.
Well, and we're also going to be doing surveys, and I actually am hoping that the Strategic Planning Task Force will be doing this over the summer. That's another thing I want Patty to work on, doing surveys of members, which will bring in that youth vote. One other thing, I've discussed many things with the consultants, is the fact that we're currently drafting our long-term strategic plan, because they asked how this executive director hire would fit with the long-term strategic plan. I said, well, the last time we did this was 2006. And one consultant laughed and was like, was it a 15-year plan? That's really crucial. And we need to move that effort along this summer to make certain that the candidates we're looking at for executive director align with the direction that is going in. So Victor and Patty will be leading that this summer. Is someone raising their hand who has not spoken yet? Okay, because we do need to wrap this up. Michael.
Look, I'm not even talking about this particular issue. We have the rest of the meeting and the rest of your term as president. I don't think this is going very well. I mean, maybe I'm the only one, but the way our bylaws are set up, whether it's this discussion or broader discussions, nothing is really out of order if the board decides to do something, Alex. And you've done all this great work, but I think the reason that there's been all this argument is that you do have a tendency to talk more than you listen, and you do have a tendency to sort of take all the great stuff you've done and then just double down on it. A lot of times, you've done all this great work. When we would question it or ask questions about it, it's not to pick it apart, it's to make it stronger. So I just don't feel like we're out of order when we ask questions. I don't feel like we're out of order when we want to cite the bylaws. And just to be clear on this, the bylaws, if you look at under president's section and the board section, it says the same thing. And I remember asking, I think I asked Becker about this a while ago, why does it say the president can appoint to committees? And why does it say the board can appoint to committees? And the answer was, you're supposed to work together. But in the final analysis, it also says the board is the society's representative for, financial fiduciary responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. So the bottom line is that the board is the ultimate authority when it comes to these sort of decisions. So if someone wants to make a motion, the only thing, look, everything that we've talked about today, Patty, not Patty, fine. There's arguments for both sides. What is not disputable, what really worries me in a very Trumpian way, is you saying that motion is out of order, i.e. we're not even going to entertain it, because if the board wants to make a motion, they can make a motion. If they want to suspend Robert's Rules of Order, the board can vote to do that. The board can vote to do whatever it wants. And I would just hate to see, moving forward for the rest of this meeting and the rest of your term, that if someone on this board wants to make a motion, they should be able to do it. And then if the motion loses, fine. But that's the way this thing is supposed to be running. So I'm just going to leave it there. I hope the rest of this, it's going to sound weird coming from me, the anarchist, but I hope the rest of this meeting not only goes a little more civilly, but that you listen a little more than you talk, and that everyone else gets to talk. And
well, the rest of the meeting will go a little civilly when we move on and start discussing some of the important decisions we have to make. I would also point out, let me finish. The bylaws say in Section 5, the president shall be the chief executive of the organization. Now, in most times when we have an executive director, the president delegates many things to the executive director, contracts, whatnot. And what our lawyer has told me is, in these interim periods, the only one who can do that is the president. This entire plan that I put together over the last month only works if I am acting as the chief executive for the next 3 months, if I am spending time in Indianapolis, if I am working with vendors and partners. That's the only way this plan works. So
I disagree with that. I disagree with
the board. And Michael, as to what the board can do, there's some debate on that. Obviously, the board can appoint committees, but it cannot necessarily override committees that are appointed by, specifically in the bylaws, by the SPJ president and the foundation board president. Those are joint committees, and I think the foundation would have something to say to that. I really do not think that you can meddle with something. You cannot tell the foundation what to do. These are joint committees, decisions that affect both the SPJ board and the foundation board.
Alex, can I just ask you one question? Setting that aside, everything I said about who should chair what committee, the other stuff I said, do you agree or disagree with me?
Okay, one thing I have to say, you've been saying all year long, Michael, and others, but you've been primarily one saying this, the board can do whatever it wants to do. First of all, that's not true. Yes, the board has wide powers, but the board has a set of bylaws. The board has policies. The board also has law, in the states that we're incorporated and work in. So we can't do whatever we want to do. But secondly, and we make this very clear in our code of ethics, just because you can do something, should you do something?
That cuts both ways.
There's one thing to say, hey, legally, I'm allowed to do whatever the hell I want. Well, is it the right thing to do? I don't believe this is the right thing to do in a public meeting, to be attacking one past national president and saying someone else should lead it, because that is not the right thing to do. This is out of order, because this is not the right
point of order. Point of order. No one, particularly me, point of order, no one, particularly me, attacked Hagit. I believe, I specifically began my statements with high praise for her. I said she's on the Mount Rushmore of SPJ. But I also think this is a philosophical debate about whether SPJ should have one of its own members to chair this committee or not, as every person who's spoken or typed in the chat box has said. So for the record, this is not an attack on Hagit. And since I write the minutes, the minutes will not reflect that it's an attack on Hagit.
Well, let me just say, this entire plan is going to fall apart if I'm not allowed to lead it. It really is. Because only the president has these chief executive powers when there's no executive director.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you not want an SPJ leader to lead this?
Erwin and I and Hagit have discussed this. We have an airtight committee. Patty has an equal vote on this committee, and I think we need to move on to the next part of the discussion. We have far more important decisions to make.
This is a philosophical
We have far more important decisions to make.
Can I please ask you to answer that question, why you do not want an SPJ leader
It's
share.
not that I don't want an SPJ leader. There's only one obvious person who has both the qualifications, the time, and it is the only logical person.
Okay, so I am the board member who is previously shut down and not allowed to make a motion. So I'm going to try one more time because I believe every
But this
board member
motion
on
is
this-
out of order.
I disagree. And I think everybody else in this meeting disagrees as well, Alex. So you can vote no, but I'm going to make the motion.
No, this motion is out of order. I do not recognize it.
Go ahead, Lauren. I'll second it.
Okay.
I do
have
not
a two-part
recognize this motion.
I have a two-part motion. First, I move that the search committee submit 3 finalist candidates to the society board, and that the society board be allowed to do a Zoom interview with the 3 finalist candidates for executive director. The second part of my motion is that Patty chair the search committee.
I second that motion.
Okay, first of all, I will tell you, this is extremely unprofessional. The fact is, if we hire, which we have not gotten to the important decision, if we hire an executive director search firm, they will be gathering candidates. They will help us to make a selection. We cannot predict in advance how many qualified candidates we have. So it's foolish to be prescriptive like that when you're going into a professional contract with an outside search service, first of all. And second of all, I have said that this motion is out of order. You can bring it back later, but I've said that this motion is out of order.
That's what I was saying earlier. That's my only objection to this whole thing. I really, at this point, don't even care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if our president is going to say we, as a board of directors, can't even vote on a motion. If we do it wrong, then I think we can consult our attorney and we can get culpa and fix our mistake. But I don't know that I've never been in an organization where
I really want to emphasize here, we have important decisions to make now.
You're right.
We need to decide, we were supposed to be discussing whether or not to hire a consultant, which consultant to hire, what services to hire, how much we will pay for the service. Those are important decisions to make.
I agree with you.
This is not about whether or not Patty gets to add a chair title to her name. He is on this committee.
I agree with you.
The only thing Hagit will be doing, and Hagit will be doing this, is chairing those meetings and writing the final report.
I don't even care about that. I care about the fact that whatever the motion is, even if I disagree with it, we won't hear the motion because the president won't let it happen. That's my only objection. And that's the only clarification that I want to make. Do we really want to be a board where the president can say, you cannot entertain that motion, you cannot vote? That's all I want to say.
You can come back to this at a later meeting, but I'm not going to entertain this because we need to move on and have a civil conversation about these important contracts with consultants. And we need to discuss this now so we can bring it to the foundation. I want to get these consultants in that office immediately. This is so crucial to making this interim period work.
But there's a motion on the floor.
This board is a problem. This board is a problem. And if this board continues like this, the next executive director will have problems.
You might be right, but there's a motion on the floor. We might be doing this all wrong, but we have the right to be wrong.
Not when the organisation is concerned. The organisation comes first, not the board.
Can someone restate the motion?
Yeah, I have the motion as this. Lauren moved that the search committee submit 3 finalists to the SPJ board and that the board would do Zoom interviews with those finalists and that Patty would chair the search committee.
Well, if Alex, if you don't want to call the vote, what is the process there? Does Patty take over the gavel for this motion if you don't want?
No, but I'm going to tell you something. This plan I put together only works if you allow me to lead SPJ at the end of my term. Matt.
I think, Alex, I think you're conflating 2 things. You keep talking about how we're impinging on your ability to lead. All we're saying is that philosophically, we would like an SPJ leader to chair this task force. Every other comment about every other aspect of this plan to date in this meeting has been auditory about what you've put together.
But I'm telling you that I'm not going to put that plan in motion if you take this vote. That plan is dependent on my working for free, putting in $100,000 of work, working 16-hour days over the next 3 months. And I'm telling you, I'm not going to put that plan into motion if you take this vote.
Okay, well, first of all, you have the right to do whatever you want. I mean, first of all, you get a lot of credit for everything that you've done. I don't think anyone can dispute that. But if you really don't want to do that, then that falls back on the board.
No, I'm telling you, this board needs to start being supportive, not only of this president, but of this staff. You've done several things recently that have upset the staff.
So have you.
Get on board with this.
Do not go down that road.
What?
Well, there's a motion on the floor. There's a motion on the floor.
Board needs to get supportive. And I cannot tell you in a public session, but I will tell you in executive session.
Okay.
There are some things that have been done on email that should never be done on email.
And you're probably right. We make mistakes all the time. But the question now, well, actually, Yvette wants to say something. I'll shut up.
No, actually, I see Yvette. You're having your hand raised. You have the floor.
I believe that, and I'm not sure of procedure, but I believe that we need to go into executive session right now. Several things are happening. We're not moving forward. The board, yeah, I mean, we're not moving forward. And if there's things that need to be said, it needs to be said in executive session so that we can move forward, because we're not moving forward right now.
That's an excellent point. So do we have a motion to go into executive session? I'll say Yvette moved the motion. Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
I don't think we should.
Can we? Why are we going to executive session?
I don't see a reason.
Because it's uncomfortable?
That's not a good reason.
My reason was that if there's information that we're seeking that we can't get in public session, is that what I'm hearing? There's information that we need to.
Well, relative to the motion on the floor, what information are we seeking that would need to go into executive?
Exactly.
Right. It has to be related to the motion. What's the relation to the motion?
Again, I'm really not sure. I'm hearing that there's some information that we can't talk about in public session. I want to know, is it related? What it is, and is it related potentially to the motion?
What we've heard is that the staff is upset by the board. I don't see that related to the motion.
Well,
Somebody say something.
If no one
well, obviously, if you can't say it in public session, you can't say it in public session.
If no one seconds, I'll withdraw the motion. But that was.
I mean, I agree, but I'm chairing the meeting, so I would prefer someone else to do that.
I think it's a noble idea, but it just isn't appropriate.
Fine, I'll withdraw the motion. That's fine. We'll just continue to go around in circles.
Yes.
I'd appreciate any advice for how not to do that.
Can I, Alex?
Yes?
I am not attempting to do a coup. I am not attempting to usurp your power. I simply thought it was appropriate for me to be in the role of leading the search committee.
Yes, I hear that, and there are reasons which I would like to discuss this with you. And if you will agree to this, we can have a conversation later. I already said I wanted to speak with you later today. I just literally did not have time between my travel problems and waiting for the others. I could discuss my reasons with you privately, Patty. I can also say some things, although I would prefer not to, about people in executive session that I cannot say in public session. But I would prefer to discuss them with you personally one-on-one. So if you would, since I understand you've obviously discussed this, I'm getting a weird echo. If you would agree to wait and talk to me after the meeting, and they would withdraw the motion, we can discuss this after the meeting. If you, this is an inappropriate way to handle this. I'm sorry, people, it really is. Patty and I can discuss this. I had already planned on Patty and Hagit and I working like a triumvirate. They're both in Cincinnati. I wanted them to come to Indianapolis and meet with people together, maybe even do a road trip. There are many things I want to do together. If Patty and I talk, she may, and here's what I have to say, she may not want to chair this committee. So it's an inappropriate thing to be discussing at the board level in a public meeting when we have very serious decisions we need to make about contracts. So Patty,
Alex, if you'll stop talking, thank you. I would be happy to put this conversation on pause.
Thank you.
That you and I had the opportunity to talk about this in advance. That didn't happen, and perhaps that's part of my issue here. I would like to put this on pause, and I would like to move to the very important matters in Alex's memo that we're going to go into.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I've been trying to get to. And again, I'm sorry, I have to admit, I did not know until yesterday that you wanted to chair the committee. You sent an email 2 days ago, but I didn't see it because of my travel issues. So I did not know until yesterday, and yesterday was exceptionally busy for me. I'd asked you to be on the committee in an email earlier, and because I didn't know you were interested in chairing until yesterday, we have not had time to discuss it because the last 24 hours have been nonstop for me. I think we should just talk about it later, and I suspect you won't want to chair the committee, in which case this motion is rather silly. Matt, is this about moving on?
It will be in about 2 minutes, but I got to say, as someone who is hopefully going to serve on this committee, when I hear you talk about a triumvirate of you and Patty and Hagit moving forward on this, there's 7 members on that committee.
Absolutely, and maybe that's misspeaking. I just meant they could come down together because they're both in Cincinnati. We will be doing interviews in Indianapolis, but I didn't have time to describe the whole process. They'll do the pre-screening to find the qualified candidate, assuming we hire this outside search firm. All of this is a puzzle I put together over the last months, and all of these pieces have to fit together.
And I would just, again, propose to you that this is a board. This is not a dictatorship.
Right. I understand that. But
and I think I'm all in for moving on, but I would like to ask board members so that in your conversation with Patty, you have a sense of what the board would prefer to see on this philosophical question. Are there any board members who do not want to see Patty lead, who want to see Hagit lead on the basis of this philosophy that SPJ
I thought this was about moving on, Matt. I'm sorry. We have exceptional.
I think that's a fair last question.
Let him finish.
I think that's a fair last question.
The last hour on this.
I think that's a fair last question to end on, because I think it will help inform the conversation that you two have offline. Again, I respectfully ask.
I don't see people
if any board member
jumping in, and I really think we need to move on. Patty has already asked that we not vote on this motion. So can we remove the motion from the floor for now?
Well, it's not. It's Lauren's motion.
Can we table it?
Table it. Thank you. It's been a long week.
Sorry, this is my motion. Here's what I'm willing to do. I am willing to split it in half and table the portion about the chair, but I would like this board to vote on having the 3 finalists do the Zoom interviews with the society board.
Okay.
That's a structural thing that I think.
Lauren, can I raise one point with you? We're going into executive session to discuss these contracts. Then we'll exit executive session to hopefully vote on whether to accept one of the contracts for an outside consultant firm. Can you wait and perhaps discuss that after we've had the discussion about the outside search firm, and perhaps include that in a motion once? I have no idea whether this board will vote for this plan or do something else once we get into exec. And since that's about telling the executive search committee and potentially the consultants how to do their job, can you wait till we've had that discussion and do this after we exit executive session?
I want to get a sense of this board because it's already, I'm sorry, I'm going to use West Coast times here. You guys can convert for a change. It's 10:18, which means we have about an hour and 10 minutes left. I'm concerned about losing board members. If there's a commitment that everybody can stay longer and we can ensure a vote, I'd be willing to entertain putting it on hold. If that's not the case, I want to vote now.
Okay. And my recommendation was simply to discuss that in an executive session.
Well, so I'm asking
because that's why I mean, people talk about this as a dictatorship. I'm trying to move us into executive session so we can vote on these contracts. Okay, that's what I'm doing here in my role as chair. But we have a motion on the table. Lauren has modified her motion. Sue, I believe you were the second. Is that correct?
I am.
Okay. You'd have to second.
With the changes, Sue?
Reluctantly, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to require the executive director search committee to bring 3 names to the
Society board.
Right, to the society board.
3 candidates and then to conduct Zoom interviews with those candidates.
Okay, and that's the text. You got that, Matt?
I do.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Nay.
Abstention.
And abstention. I was going to call for that next. So I had Patty and myself as nay, Yvette as an abstention. I just want to explain. I think that we should probably be bringing 3 people. The only reason I'm voting nay is I feel like we've not even decided yet whether to hire a consultant. And I believe that we need to work with the consultant on this before getting too prescriptive and telling them exactly how they should do their job before we've even had a first sit-down conversation with them and listen to them and what they say, how we best do our job. I doubt we'll need to overturn it. But if they say this is a bad idea, then I'm going to have to come back to you all and say we need to change that motion.
And then I'm certainly open to that in the future. I don't want a repeat of last time.
Okay, I'm just saying that's the only reason I voted nay. It's not that I object to bringing 3 people, but I would prefer to talk to the consultant first. So, okay. With that exciting session. Yes, Matt?
Quick point of order. Do Yvette or Patty want to explain their votes for the minutes?
I will very briefly. I concur with Alex that we don't yet know what our vote on the recommendation is. And I do in spirit hope that we can bring more than one candidate forward to vote on or for the board's consideration, but I don't want to be so specific to say 3. It might be 2, it might be 4, it might be 3. So that was my thinking.
Good point. Yvette?
Yes, basically my reasoning is the same.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we're all in line. The 3 of us just felt we should discuss the consultant first. Okay. With that, do we have a motion to move into executive session? Oh, wait. I'm so sorry. Before I do that, we had a public comment period, and I see one member of the public, Dave. Dave is on the line. Dave, did you want to speak? Okay, great. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for joining us. Do we have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Yvette, do we have a second?
Second from Patty.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay. We're now entering executive session for the purpose of discussing potential contracts. Okay, we are recording again. We've exited executive session. We need to make a couple of motions, beginning with the proposal that I submitted to the board for consultants. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion.
Okay, Patty.
I move that we hire the firm recommended by SPJ President Alex Turquinio to conduct an assessment of SPJ and to manage a search for a new executive director contingent upon completion of satisfactory reference checks.
Second.
Okay, second from Matt Hall. And to be clear, Patty, you're talking about the full, there are some things in the plan, for example, the other things that they would do in terms of the assessment. I'm wondering if it could be a bit more general, because without saying everything they do, not everything in that plan that they would do is covered by what you just said. So, but whereas before we discussed adopting the recommendations.
Like me to strip out the specifics and simply recommendation as
hire the firm for the recommended services. I'm just saying, because someone could look back in future and say, wait a minute, there were specific services that we hired them to do that were not mentioned in Patty's motion. you know what I'm talking about. So maybe just
right. So I'm going to amend myself if that's allowed here.
Yeah.
I would move that we hire the firm recommended by SPJ President Alex Turquinio to conduct the services discussed contingent on completion of satisfactory reference checks.
Okay, Matt, do you accept that?
Yeah, I do. I second that.
Okay, perfect.
Are we allowed to say who the firm is?
No, I mentioned that in exec, I think. No, I'm not going to announce the firm until we sign the contract. Who knows what happens between now and the contract.
But then we would say who it is?
Oh, absolutely. Once we hire them, we're gonna press release. We're gonna announce we've hired this person, and I don't know if it's a press release or a blog post, but we're absolutely going to announce that we've hired this person, and I'm going to be writing about the interim plan and all that.
Okay.
Yes,
Sure.
when I say person, I mean firm. But anything could happen between now and contract. Once we get into negotiating it, we don't want to announce the firm until we haven't even spoken with them and told that we want to hire them. So yes,
Okay.
does that answer your question, Andy?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. We have a motion on the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay. The motion is approved. Great. Now we have a second motion.
I'd like to amend the May 6 minutes as discussed in closed session.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Lauren? Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion is approved. Okay, anything further before we end the meeting?
To adjourn.
Okay. Well, do we have a motion to adjourn? Matt, were you moving? Was that
Sorry, Patty. Were you going to say something? I didn't mean to.
No, not at all. Was that a motion to adjourn?
Patty's got something.
Okay, Patty.
Small question. Chat function, is that recorded? And
What function?
Chat function on our site here.
I don't know, and I've not been able to follow the chat. You do not have time when you're chairing a Zoom meeting.
Right. I just wonder if some of the items that are there could only be executive session items.
Oh. Okay, I will look back. That's a good point. I hope that during executive session, people were not tweeting about or chatting about things that should not be shared.
I think people were very deliberate, but there are some comments about Billy that probably should just be executive session comments.
That's an excellent point because we do not record, but I probably should have turned off the chat. Actually, in the future, I think maybe we should not chat in executive session for that reason. And I'll see, because I do actually believe it is automatically recorded. And Jennifer and I share this account, by the way, so you should know. And obviously, Billy has access to it because he puts it on the web. So I will go in now and see if I can delete that. Thank you, Patty. But as a rule, we shouldn't actually be talking about these issues in chat. We should actually be discussing the meeting when everyone has the benefit of hearing your comments. It's not really like, a social chat session. I mean, if someone has they should raise their hand and make a question. And so, when you're chairing a meeting, you don't really have time to read everything in chat. So,
Alex, to be clear, this is not salacious gossip. It's
no
questions on procedural matters.
Okay, that's good to know.
A few things in there that perhaps would not be appropriate for public.
Okay, well, this is public session, but I will go in and check and see if I can do anything about that. But just so you know, in future, that should only be for a procedural question or if someone for some reason is having trouble being heard. Matt.
Patty, do you want to emphasize the side issues for those who didn't see them in the chat that you made about the convention and elections and your other task force?
Yeah, very quickly, I just put in 3 issues that I didn't want to take time to go over. So if everybody could just take a minute to look at chat. One is that we still need more candidates to run for the board, to run especially for regional coordinator positions. Just an update that Victor has had the first meeting of the Street Task Force. It went well. We're going to meet every 2 weeks. And then finally, just everything's going well in terms of EIJ programming and early bird specials. And on the 27th, so sign up early to save a little money. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Wait, I'm sorry. Who was speaking?
Can I something to Andy? On the election issue, I just wanted to remind ourselves that we have an election now going on. We, until very recently, had all of last year's candidates listed, and that has been removed. But I think it's time to get the new candidates listed the first chance we get. We have questionnaires that candidates can answer. I'll take care of that. We are going to be doing podcasts again, so there will be full coverage as much as possible. And I also this came up early in the meeting, but I'd like to state it for the record that we need to fully commit to this idea of 72 hours notice for agendas, notice, frequent mention in social media, and so forth, as if we really want to reach our members. And I understand all of the challenges this time, but we can't each time say, well, we would have done it except this happened. This is really something that we have to do each time. I heard from people who were really pissed that this happened all over again. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and I
Duly
wholeheartedly
noted,
agree.
Lauren. Wait, it would help if you wait till I recognize. I said duly noted, Andy, Lauren.
My apologies. I just want to echo what Andy said about getting the agenda. I know a lot of times the supporting materials take longer or are done at the last minute, but the agenda itself and proactively notifying members of the meeting leads rather than hoping people see something on social. I think it's really important for us to proactively notice the meetings and to make sure we get the agendas up at least 72 hours in advance.
Okay, I'm sorry, Yvette, did you have your hand up? No, okay, I thought I saw a hand. Did someone else have their hand up? You just do a lot of hand gestures. Okay, anyone else have their hand up? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Yvette. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We have a motion on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Thank you. We got through a marathon meeting. We've approved, I think, a very important plan, and I look forward to seeing it through. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.